So I am going to be analyzing Russian and American cultures and some of the just one of the practices that um, varies between the two. So the first article I read was found in Time magazine, I guess on the internet actually, and it was titled "How to Parent Like a Russian." It was written by Donna Gorman, and one of the little segments that she talks about is it's titled "Don't Freeze Your Eggs, Freeze Your Babies." And so in Russia and Ukraine, I lived in Ukraine for a while, so I actually saw this, but they're very, like, the older generation is very serious about, like, wearing tights and not sitting on cold surfaces. And when it's cold outside, you can never drink a cold drink because you'll either get sick or your ovaries will freeze. So, you're like not allowed to do that at all. However, when a baby is born at about 2 weeks, they believe that it is so imperative that you wrap up the baby and basically like expose them to the cold weather. So, like sub zero weather, like I'm talking, we're in the negatives. They will wrap up these babies in like little snowsuits and put them in strollers and just take them all over the place for like hours. Sometimes they'll even have them like nap outside on their like balcony, or just like they'll go into a store and leave them outside. And like if you ask any of them why they do that, they tell you like it's good for their lungs, it's better for their health, and the main one is because it's tradition. Like their moms did it and their grandmas did it, and so on and so on. And so it's such a cultural thing that they do there that no one like questions it at all. And then if you compare that to American culture, there's an article. It was Motherly, a modern lifestyle brand refining motherhood, and that was written by Diana Spalding. And the whole thing is about how cold is too cold for a baby to go outside, and it is just amazing how drastically different they Americans and Russians think. And so she was talking about how if it is basically like sub zero, you shouldn't ever really be taking your babies outside. And if you do take your baby outside, it should only be for a few minutes, and you should wrap them up. And yeah, it was really funny. And she was saying that babies should always be in like 68 to 72 degree weather, or like inside. That's what your thermostat should be set at. And her whole reasoning behind it was babies can't regulate their body temperature like an adult can. And so for a baby, it's super dangerous to bring them out in extreme temperatures. And I loved it because she's like, you're not overreacting by being nervous about taking your baby out in the cold. And like Russians are upset if you don't take your baby out in the cold. So I just thought it was funny. And then basically I was looking at it and like how this applies to our class and things that we've been learning in class. And there's the conformity orientation. And in Russia and Ukraine, it is expected that children follow traditions. So like above everything, they are taught that like nationality and just basically like being loyal to the traditions of your ancestors are so vital. Like they believe in superstitions, and like I thought people my age wouldn't really believe that if I sat on a cold bench that my ovaries would freeze, but like they totally do. And they have surgeries to like fix it, and I'm just like, what the heck is going on? So I mean, like it's so real for them. because that's what they've been taught their whole lives, and so the tradition for them is just the most important thing. And in the U.S., I feel like parenting, we fit the trend. Like parenting has changed from when my parents were kids to when I was a kid, and I'm gonna do things differently than when my parents did, and because we fit whatever the trend is at that time. Like spanking when I was growing up is completely different than my nieces and nephews, and my cousins, and it's interesting because for them it's just whatever my parents did is what I will do, and it doesn't change like at all for them. And Russians are very like consensual. They're very talkative in families, so they'll talk about problems and issues, but ultimately the parents are the ones that make those decisions. And you have like those intergenerational families, right? So you've got grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and their kids all living under the same roof, and that was kind of like Soviet times. It still remained, but like the head of the household is whoever's oldest, and so like grandma and grandpa a lot of times will be raising those kids and doing these things that they like, the traditions, and so they teach their kids this is how you're supposed to raise your kids as well. And in America, we rarely ever see that. Everyone's living under the same roof, or grandma is telling you how to raise your kids. Like it's done, but it's a lot more rare, and it doesn't seem like it's their place. So it's just different in that way. And yeah, if you look at the Russian and American cultures, they're so drastically different. And I feel like I learned a lot about how I learned more about conformity orientation in that regard, I guess. But yeah, that is Russia and Ukraine for you. I mean, and America. Oops.